I'm on. I'm getting my oil changed, so I've got myself on mute.
So Derek and the rest of your crew isn't with you?
No,
Okay.
no, they're not with me.
Are you social distancing the oil change place?
Well, let's get started, guys. I don't want to take up everybody's time today. We are on a time limit. So before we jump in, here again are just some quick Zoom tips and tricks if this is your first time on Zoom. Also, in the chat option, I kind of provided a link to the workbook as well, just in case you guys don't have a copy of that. It should be there now for you to copy and paste and have a copy of it as we go through the material. So welcome to listing conversion and thanks for coming. Like we said in our reminder videos this morning, we're doing things a little bit differently with this class. Instead of going through all of the information and the PowerPoint presentations, we've decided to mix it up and highlight just kind of the 5 stages of converting a listing, while also getting your input and market input and make it a little bit more personal and a little bit more of a conversation. So we're really excited about that. When we had our perspective course last week, we talked about sparring and the importance of sparring. And SPAR breaks down to study, practice, action, and then reinforce. And we believe that, you know, through sparring, that's where we get most of our value is through study and practice and then taking action. So think about that as we go through this course material, because that's the whole point of mastery, is to study and practice and take action. We also are really blessed because we have all of you guys here, and we also have asked Mel to come into this class. Thank you, Mel, for coming in and being able to talk about kind of what she does with listing conversion and kind of what some of her dialogue sounds like, because we want that to bring you guys a lot of value as well. So I would highly encourage you I'd highly encourage you after this class to kind of look through the workbook if you haven't and dig a little bit deeper with that material, because it is really valuable. It's just a lot, so we try to condense it here. But it is a really good book, and it provides you lots of great examples that you can run with. So we hope that by communicating and interacting more together, we can generate more ideas, help each other out more. So the more, like, if you have an idea, feel free to post it in chat or raise your hand or just speak up, or any aha moments or anything that you do, we would love to hear that. So let's jump into it.
You know, Kaylin, this is one of my favorite classes that we've got. I just think it's one of the most valuable ones we have as well. There's a ton of material on here. Over the years, we've broken this class down into a couple different classes, and that's probably what we'll do today. There's no way we're going to even try to get through all of it. But there's some really good, just what do I want to say, practical stuff that's in here that I think everybody can walk away with. If, you know, one of the things that we want everyone to have is a process, you know, whether it's working with buyers, certainly working with sellers. When we walk into one of our listing conversations, we want to have a process. We don't ever want to wing it. It is one of the most dollar producing activities we can do. So why in the world would we ever just wing it? So today, whether you've already got a process and you just want to tweak it, or whether you don't have a process and you're looking for a total new one, this will give you an opportunity to do either of that. And so I love this class. There's just a ton of information here. So thanks for teaching it.
Hey, yeah, no, I love this class too. You know, that brings us to our next slide. You know, what is this class about? Well, listing conversion, like, it really just teaches you guys a conversational approach to helping sellers. You want to lead them down a path of kind of self-discovery and bring that value from your business to that path. So since this course is a conversion course, we're assuming that that lead has already been generated. So now we want to kind of imagine that we're going to attract our clients into agreeing, into establishing that working relationship with us. So the strategy kind of taught in this class because of that is a relation-based listing strategy. And again, that workbook covers that a little bit more in depth, but that's the gist of the strategy. And they do that through the 5 stages of converting a listing that we're going to look at. So just a couple things that are important to remember just about the overall content before we look at those stages is, like Jason was saying, you want to have a unique strategy and a process. So it's important to take these strategies and implement them with your own personality into it. I mean, we never want to be robotic by any means with the scripts or anything. So don't be afraid to take some of this information and kind of twist it into your own way that works for your business and your clients. Some other things is, you know, you want to be mindful of your attitude. Always, not just with this strategy, but with all kinds of the strategies that we teach in these classes. And that helps you kind of remain focused, prepare ahead of time, get you in that right mindset. And then also, if you kind of look at those core beliefs too, that'll give you something to kind of fall back on sometimes when you're communicating with your sellers and trying to get that listing too. Being able to fall back on those beliefs if you're running into a conversational hiccup or something can be really helpful.
Hey, Kaylin.
Yeah.
Can I interrupt for just a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
I make an example of Mel when she's not around, and since she's actually around, I probably should just fess up with some of this. Is it time or okay to talk about why a person wouldn't want to generate a whole bunch of listing leads prior to this class being taught? Because you just said this class assumes that the listing lead has already been generated.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect point, Jeff. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, so why would a person, this is just for anything, why would a person want to go through a class that's about a process, your process, or work on your process for a listing? Why would you want to go through that before you generated listing leads? So I picked on Mel a lot because early in our career, Mel worked with all buyers and I worked with all the sellers, and I don't know why, but I don't know how we started down that path, but it became like a habit. And Mel would like avoid listings. Is that true, Melissa?
No, it's very true. I did not like listings. Now I love listings. I don't want to go in the car with the buyer for days. Forget it. I only want the, you know, the slam down buyers. So
Why do you like listings? Just a couple reasons why you like listings.
listings, one, allow you to control your time. So I know exactly how much time I'm typically going to put into a listing, and listings can make you money when you're not out with a buyer. So I always have things that are possible of selling.
So
I can
why,
build my pipeline more and my income.
okay, why did you have a reverse mindset? Why did you have a poor mindset about listings early on?
I personally was intimidated by them.
I think that most agents
okay,
kind of
back
feel that way.
Back to the point. So if anybody out there either doesn't know about listings, you know, most of us on here have been through it, but there's a few that haven't been to a listing, had an opportunity at taking a listing yet. And it's kind of daunting because you're going to a seller's house, they're prepared, you know, that, and they're thinking about selling, and you're wanting to, you have this overwhelming feeling about getting, a lot of times about getting that listing, and you don't have a set process in place. So my contention about this class is that no matter where you're at, you can either tweak your process, make it a little better, or create a process that will provide more confidence, because I think it's about confidence. And that's where that check the attitude, you know, he has a check the attitude, check your attitude line on every class that we go through with Momentum. Why is check your attitude on every class? I think it's such a big part of everything that we do, our confidence. Can anybody speak to that?
Well, if I can add to it, I think when we started, Jeff, we did not have a process. So I went in blind and I just had nothing organized. I was throwing up on them. They were more confused after I left than when we started. So now I have a process. I mean, and it's the process that I follow every single time, no matter if they're a $50,000 listing or if they're a $2 million. It is my process. I know exactly what I'm doing and how I'm going to do it.
Yeah, and
That's an awesome point, Mel. You know, I think a lot of times we get into, you hear it all the time, agents, we especially skip our process with people we know really well. And boy, that creates, you lose friendships over it, or they can be strained. Family members, you see them going to list with somebody else. And it's because we don't take the time to go through that same process, and and they just trust you. So you just tell them what they should list for. You don't tell them anything about what you're going to do. And so they just assume you're like every other realtor, and you're just, you know, they don't understand what all goes into it. So
Well, and
I love the fact that it doesn't matter if it's a $50,000 trailer or condo or a $5 million house, you know, it's the same process over and over.
Well, and I think you have a good point with our friends and family, and that's normally your first set of clients that you go after. So when I do get a past client even, or a friend, I'll go even above and beyond. I mean, even down to my dress. Like today I'm in jeans. There is no way I would go looking like I do to any listing appointment today. If somebody called and wanted to list today, I would go home and change because I'm not ready to go. And I don't think I look bad, but I will not show up. And with your friends and family, I even go above and beyond because I don't want them to look at me like their friend. I am the professional, and it's a different role we're going to do today. Not, hey, let's go have a beer on your dock. Nope, not participating that way. This is business.
I love that point.
I think when you do that, Mel, you really are setting the stage for them not only looking at you differently, but referring you differently. I mean, they're going to think of you as the real estate professional, and they're a lot more likely to refer you to other friends and family where they may feel obligated to use you
Yeah.
because you're a close friend or family, but they don't necessarily feel obligated to refer you. But whenever you constantly show up as the professional and indicate that you're the professional, they're much more likely to actually refer you.
Those are all really great points. Mel, you said something about how you were flying all over the place when you first started, and you didn't have necessarily a process, but that led me into this next point too, with having a process along with your strategy, and that process being something like the book gives you with that 47 vital listing activities, taking those, because those activities are from a find to close checklist is kind of how you want to think about those. And so I think it's really important to kind of take time with those particular examples and make it your own, you know, cross off things that work or don't work, and kind of have a find to close checklist as well. And we find that the more that you have a process with your strategy like that, the more prepared that you are. A couple other things, you know, track your key indicators of success or your conversion rates. The momentum books call them key indicators of success, but they're the same thing. So that way you can, you know, be able to go into an appointment and say something like, you know, I have a 98% sale to list price ratio, or a percent of listings that sell. Being able to have numbers like that really shows your professionalism and that you go kind of above what a typical agent in our market would do. So that's a really great point. And then lastly, have a conversation. Again, with this class, it really focuses on moving away from that presentation mindset and sitting down and having a conversation, much like we're doing now with just a lot of input, being able to ask lots of questions to uncover your seller's needs, and really just taking the time to you know, make it an intentional conversation and not just you presenting and throwing up all over your sellers, like Mel had said. So after this class, like Jeff said, you should feel confident enough in getting into relationships with sellers, especially with generating ideas like we are today. So now I want to transition and have the conversation about the pre-conversation activities that takes place first before you meet with a seller. And so this is stage 1 of the 5 stages. And like I said, it's completed before you even go and have that conversation or that face-to-face meeting. And being able to put these pre-conversation activities with some minor like courtesies make a big difference and could actually lead to you getting the listing for just offering, you know, to take off your shoes or something like that. So keep that in mind. So who knows kind of what these are, these 6 pre-conversation activities, or what are some pre-gaming steps that you guys are taking right now when you're preparing to talk to your sellers?
So do you want examples? Is that what you're
Yeah.
looking for? So one thing I did share with Kaylin, I sent her a form that I use, which is even more in depth than what we have in our book. But it's my listing information sheet that I use all the time. This was from a Howard Brinton class. And this is probably more so when we got where I felt more comfortable doing listings. But I absolutely go through all the questions and I basically interview them on the phone because I want to see what objectives I'm going to come up against prior. You know, are you interviewing other agents? If they are, I try to be the last one. I want to come in at the last. So if they have 3, I'll say, well, what time slots do you have? They'll be like, well, I'm talking to somebody at from like 10 to 11. You know, maybe we could do you at 3 o'clock. Well, I tell them I want at least 2 hours with you because I know the other ones are going to fly through it. So I want the longest amount of time and I want to be the last one.
So one thing you said there, because a lot of the value in these classes comes out of little bitty things. So I just caught something there. You tell seller prospects, people that you don't have listed yet, that you're going to spend a lot of time with them.
I do. And it will normally, well, and I used to make fun of Jeff because Jeff would be there forever. And I'm like, what?
You did make fun of me.
I did. Now I'll be there for 4 hours. I mean, I'll eat dinner with them. You know, I want to like almost beat them down because I want to know everything from their grandkids' names to the first boat they ever owned.
Hey.
I want everything I can about them now.
Hey, you're not alone, girl. Sam Rhodes used to make fun of me for 2 reasons. He said, I cannot believe you, first of all, you accept water or a drink from sellers we're interviewing with. And then he said, every listing we go into, you use their bathroom. And I said, Sam, it's bonding. I took a drink from him and we're, you know, and then at some point, because I took a water from him, I got to use the restroom. But he used to make fun of me too. But the truth is what you said about time, the time you're going to spend with them is different than what other agents say to them. So that little bitty thing created something that was different. And that happens early on. And that is something we can do specifically. So we can tell them we're going to spend time with them. One of the things that I always used to try to say is, you know, I treat my business like a business. Now, I don't know where that comes up in the conversation, but that was always my little part. And if I could start that type of dialogue with people, I knew it would cause them possibly to think about me differently than another agent. And it's not necessarily because of what I did. It's just what I told them or how I communicated to them.
Well, one thing I started doing too is I want them to feel comfortable more with me now. So now, like we have these cool cups that we have. I always have this with water or tea and I bring it in with me. I may not drink any of it, but if the conversation gets heated, I'll slow it down by me taking a few drinks and thinking. So anymore now, what I'm trying to do is slow them down. And then I'll be like, oh, I'm out. So then they have to get up and they'll get themselves something to drink because then they're more comfortable. I'm just trying to get them to relax. So yeah, normally I have to use their bathroom too because I'll have like 3 big glasses of something before I'm done.
Just so you guys know, I shared another link for those listing questions that Mel was talking about that she uses. So that way you guys can see kind of her example. But yes, asking pre-listing questions is definitely one of the 6 pre-conversation activities that you want to do. Can anybody give us any more?
You talking about on the 6th, Kaylin?
Yes, yes, sir. Just like anything, like what are you guys doing to prepare before you go and talk to sellers?
Karen, you do a great job with this. What are you doing to prepare? And don't think, you don't have to think outside the box. Just
No, a lot of the same things as Mel. I always pay attention to, I always do listings in a 2-part. I never go in just once. I go in and set up the appointment. I'm with Mel. I always make sure I'm dressed accordingly. The only thing that gets kind of funny are farm listings, if you think you're going to be tromping around on property. But other than that, I like what you said about particularly you go a little over the top with your family and friends. I'm stealing that because I would probably, I don't think I go super casual, but I might have made that mistake in the past. And I go in, I've got, well, we have our listing packet. I take that, I have a little intro letter about myself and about our team. So I start out with the Remax advantage, the All Pro team advantage, you know, explaining a little bit about that and then a little bit about me. And that goes in that folder with our listing packet. And then I normally don't do any comparable properties or anything like that, but if I can run like what's currently on the market or stuff like that, I'll have that in the other side. What I don't have is a questionnaire. I was looking on my email to see if I could find that on my phone. That I'd like to steal, frankly. But then I go in, take notes on the property, get to know them, like Mel, ask them about their family. I spend some time, I can honestly say I've never used anyone's bathroom, but I'll keep that in mind as a possibility.
I'm sorry, it's true.
But I will take a water from them. I don't have a problem with that. But and so I just get to know them, walk around the house or the property or whatever it is, take notes, and then I come back with a proposal about how it could be listed.
Karen, I really like how you said that you try to kind of assemble some pricing tools ahead of time if you can. Does anybody else try to do something like that? I mean, Mel, do you try to do pricing tools or CMA of any kind?
I don't go into pricing anymore with them because I feel I've just been burnt before. You will
Right.
not get a price out of me.
Nope.
Because it's been thrown back in my face where I've overpriced them or underpriced them, and I'm like, nope, not doing it anymore.
I don't go in either with any sort of, I might show them what's currently on the market, but I don't go in because, as you know here, you can't just go 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, half acre, I'm done. It just doesn't work. I don't know if that works anywhere, but I know it does not work here at the lake. You know, and if it's lakefront, is it in the back of a cove? Is it out on the main channel? Is it sitting looking at beautiful homes? There's just, that's why I have to do a 2-parter because you can't possibly predict what that house is going to look like.
Well, and I think that's how we overcome against the other agents, because most will give a price, especially if you've got a D personality seller. They will drill you and drill you. And I just say it's going to be an injustice to you. Until I can see it and study it and do my homework, I'm not going to give you a price today because it's not fair to you. We're going to leave money on the table. You know, and when I go to, I print off their tax records, the GIS information, because most agents won't do that. So then I can talk about things like, well, let's look at your dock envelope because that's going to change the value.
Right.
Let's look at how your lakefront is. Did anybody explain this to you? You know, about dock permits. You're going to have to get your dock electric brought up to code. So I can go over objectives I know that are coming that most agents won't do. They're just going to go in there and say, you know, what's my price? And they go, oh, 3-2 ledges. Yep, here's your price. No, that's not what it is. What if your dock slips right in front of your unit and your other one's way around the corner? That changes value. Condition changes value. What else was I going to tell you? One thing I do that's not in here, I will always leave them with seller's disclosures. Because I'll say, listen, whether you hire me or hire somebody else, you know, this is something you're going to have to do. We all use the same forms, but then you can at least start working on that while you make your decision. You know, I'm hoping that you do choose me, but I want to give you something of value that you're going to have to do regardless. Because most people won't leave that. So I always leave them with disclosures to fill out.
Mel,
do
do
that
you
too.
ever prepare a listing agreement ahead of time?
No, normally not. That might just because I'm lazy.
I used to.
Yeah.
I used to take a copy of a listing agreement and I would tell them, you know, no matter who you decide to use, this is going to be the same form. You know, you can go through here and just be prepared for when we go, you know, when we get together the next time. If you have any questions about it, I'm going to take you through the whole thing.
Well,
It's an option.
I have
So
a
Jeff, you took in a blank one?
Huh? Yeah,
You took in a blank one?
I would take a blank one in.
Oh, that makes sense.
I would
Okay.
take it with the seller's disclosure and with that and just give it to them. And I think it was another way to differentiate.
That's okay. I don't mind the blank one. That's kind of cool.
Mhm.
But I tell you what else what I do, I don't fill it out, but I will put in what commission we charge and the transaction fee because I'm weak on transaction fee. So then if it's already pre-printed, it's not negotiable.
Mhm.
I already have an example of it. So
Okay.
I do leave that with them.
A little bitty thing that came from this class is confirming the appointment.
Right.
Do you want to talk about that, Kaylin?
Yeah, just the power of confirming the appointment too is just asking to do that ahead of time. But there are kind of some good key rules that the book points out about confirming appointments, like try to do it 3 or 4 hours ahead of time, or if it's before 11 a.m., try to confirm the day before, which is some really good good ideas there. And then also I just kind of wanted to ask Mel, you know, what kind of dialogue do you kind of use to confirm ahead of time? Are you calling? Are you texting? I mean, what does that kind of look like for you?
If I get a chance, say they called me Monday and we're going to meet Friday. So I've gone through all my questionnaires. We'll talk about it Monday. I would be calling them today about right now to say, hey, it's Melissa with Remax. Just wanted to confirm tomorrow. We're going to meet at 10 o'clock. Is that time still good for you? You know, just to let them know I am coming, and then I'm going to get there a little bit ahead of time. And the one thing I've also learned, my car better look like when I do put a buyer in there. I've been burnt on that. My car was messy once. It was not clean. They didn't like it because they're like, you show your property like that? I was like, well, shit. No, but I showed up to your house like that. That was a ding dong move. So now, because I've had a seller walk me out and tell me goodbye and search my car to see how clean it was. So I come in like I'm working with the buyer now. The car is clean. Everything's professional, lined up, purses put together, because they'll look at the car.
The other thing confirming the appointment can do is that you've got to we should always assume that we're interviewing for the listing, always. And so confirming the appointment will demonstrate your willingness to follow up, your willingness to check on them. And then it will also bring you top of mind again, because your competition is likely not confirming the appointment. And so it's going to set them on a time frame. If they have somebody coming in at 9, they're going to know you're coming in at 10. And that's good. That's going to keep them moving. I have driven up to a lot of houses where I did not confirm an appointment to sit there when I knew the other agent was still in the house. Not a fun thing to do.
Also, Jeff,
All of these things, Jeff, as you say that, especially confirming the appointment, is just another way of, we're demonstrating that we're professionals. Too many people don't look at real estate agents as professionals. And so that's what we're putting in their mind as we're doing all these little things. That's what you get that all the time from a dentist or the doctor. They'll call you to confirm the appointment. Hey, I'm just confirming your appointment. It's letting them know kind of in a subtle way that your time is very important. That not only are you checking on them, but hey, you know, I've got a busy schedule. I'm confirming the appointment, just making sure it works for you. Things change, especially down here at the lake. I mean, people, you don't confirm that. They may be out on the water. Oh, I totally forget. I promise it's happened to most everybody. So all of these things, a lot of the things that you were talking about, Mel, is you're just differentiating yourself. You're being a professional. And so as we're preparing our listing conversation, as we're preparing these pre-conversation or pre-meeting activities, think about just different ways to be a professional. How can I present myself to be more professional? And every single one of these are doing that in some way.
And I wanted to piggyback too. I know within our market, it's a little bit of a challenge sometimes because we have so many tourists traveling in and out, and setting up appointments can be a little tough at times because of that reason. But it also provides you guys the opportunity to ask or make sure that all of the decision makers are going to be there too, which can be helpful, especially if you can ask ahead of time. That way you can kind of prepare that way too, if you're going to be dealing with maybe one or both, or if there's more, and you can have that in the back of your mind also. There were also two more that we haven't really touched on yet that I feel like are really important. Number one being getting on the listing channel, and number two being arriving on time. So Mel, can you kind of explain getting on the listing channel? Like, what do you do to pump yourself up and get yourself in that right mindset before you go meet with sellers?
What I do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I used to do is write myself a blank check for what amount I would make if I got that listing. So that did help me. Now I know in my head about what I would make. But I would actually look at a check before I go in there and get myself excited to go in. And honestly, I might just listen to some wild music just to get all excited and fired up so I'm happy when I walk into the door. There's nothing conventional that I do. People would probably not list with me if they really saw what I did before I got to the door.
Well, I think that's what makes it so cool is, you know, getting on the listing channel doesn't have to be conventional. It can be fun, something, you know, I joke around when I teach these in class, like, you know, put on Eye of the Tiger or something and think about it that way. So
I think it can for sure be that way. I also think that it can be however it is that you prepare your mind to do something that's really important. I think about it as it blows me away how many people come flying in on two wheels late or right on time, not being prepared truly mentally to walk into one of the most dollar producing activities that we do. I think about as a player, like I would have never shown up. For one, we would have been fine, but I would have never shown up 5 minutes before the game started. Like it was a 3 or 4 hour process of getting your mind right, whether it was stretching or listening to music or looking at the playbook, thinking about playing, looking at the different plays and thinking about all the different scenarios that could be played out, because that was game time. And this is our game time. There is nothing that we do in real estate that is more important than getting this listing conversation right. It is the most dollar producing activity that we can do. And so taking the time to, whether it's 5 minutes or whether it's 30 minutes, whatever it is for you individually, you need to get your mind right, whether it's playing music or whether it's thinking about objections and taking those and playing those in your mind and leaning into your mirror, smiling and saying, I'm glad you asked that question, Jeff. That's a great question. And whatever it is, I mean, everybody gets different. Everybody gets their mind right differently. The key is just knowing what it is that you do to get your mind right.
Well, one thing you mentioned, Jason, I'll tell you one thing that I did last week. I went to a listing. I had pulled kind of what was out there, you know, active, what is sold, just so I had it in my mind. And I went 15 minutes early on purpose. And I drove by the house. I knew the driveway was going to be hellacious, and it was. So I wanted to see, okay, how am I going to get down it? How am I going to back out of it? And then when I drove by, there was a for sale sign by another agency next door to the house. And I'm like, I didn't see that. So I better figure out what it is. So I called that agent. I'm like, hey, are you listing it? Is it not active yet? And she goes, no, we won't list it for about another 3 weeks. Are you interviewing next door, or what are you up to? And I'm like, no, I was just curious. I was out previewing. I absolutely was. So no, I'm just previewing. I wanted to see, you know, what are you bringing it on at? She's like, well, we're waiting to see what the neighbor who's going to list is going to list his at, but we're going to come out at 400. And I'm like, oh, okay, good to know. So then I came back and went to it, and they're like, well, did you see the house next door is for sale? I said, absolutely. Here's his game plan. He's waiting to see what you do. They're going to come out at 400. He's like, oh, you already know? Well, I wouldn't have known if I was late or right on time. And I would have gotten hammered. So I do try to go early, and I drove around to see, is this dock tight? Is there any objectives I can bring up to them? So I looked at the neighborhood before I got there.
Right. And Mel, you know, like you said, before you arrive on time, like that's some good things to do, kind of drive around, look at the neighborhood, get some different demographics ahead of time if you can. Also notice, you know, maybe if you need to park on the street ahead of time and not block driveways. And then maybe even, you know, just taking a general concept of the property in your mind can really help prepare you even to get on the channel, the listing channel as well. Jason, can you tell everybody kind of what happened with that listing that you had the other day where you offered to take off your shoes and kind of what that did?
Yeah, it wasn't actually the other day. It was last year. It's been a while, but it was a big listing, and it was actually several years ago, because it was after, I think it was after the very first time we taught this. And if you look on if you'll go through your sheets and you look at the arrive on time part of that is to introduce yourself and offer to remove your shoes. And I had never done that. And we had just happened to teach this class. I did that. The lady was blown away. She's like, nobody else has ever asked to do that. She said, please do. And we ended up getting a listing. It was just, again, it was just kind of setting ourselves apart by doing something so simple. And so now it's just part of what I do every time is I start to take off my shoes. Is it all right if I take off my shoes, or would you like me to take off my shoes? And I start to do it. And most of the time, you know, 9 out of 10 times or 19 out of 20 times, oh, no, keep them on. But it's just the act of, you never know how they actually live in their home. So.
Yeah, the value is in the ask for sure.
Yep.
But you know, what's interesting with the shoes too, they will watch you. I was at a listing the other day, and it was kind of rainy a little bit. They said, keep your shoes on. But every time we went outside, I took extra long to wipe my feet off. And they're like, that was so sweet of you. But I'm like, well, it's your home. I want to make sure we take good care of it. You know, do you want me to slip them off now? And I did it on purpose. I knew I didn't have to take them off. I just wanted them to see I really cared. And then I'll also stop and say, I'll lock the door for you. Should I lock it back up? Just little examples. They're looking, you know, they want to know too, can you open the nice doors? If you're in a high-end listing and you cannot open a Pella door, you are screwed.
Right.
Because they'll watch you on camera. You better know, lift up and turn it. Because if you don't know how to do it, you don't get the listing.
Yeah, it's true.
That's a great
I mean,
point.
they qualify. They're qualifying us all over the place. And that sheet looks like this. It says arrive on time, and it says be professionally attractive. To Karen's point earlier, you show up to a farm listing in high-heeled shoes, you probably won't get it.
Right.
You were coming there specifically to list a farm, and you showed up in a manner that you can't help them.
Right.
And I mean, they judge. So that was a good point as well. But I think it's these little things that are as important as anything when we get going. So
I do too. And now I kind of want to jump into talking or thinking about having that conversation with your sellers. So you've done kind of all of these pre-conversational activities. You've introduced yourself, you've arrived on time, you've taken your time, and you've done all of these small little things. Now we're going to talk about like entering into that conversation. So when you sit back down at the dining room or the kitchen table, I would never recommend sitting in a living room or anything like that. But, you know, you're going to try to have that conversation. So you want to convey 3 messages when entering that conversation zone. Number 1, that not all agents behave the same, and you're not one of those typical agents. That we have to find and agree on an appropriate price entry point to list the home, and that each role, you being the agent and them being the clients, you have roles and specific expectations within those roles. So the main point, like this side says is to engage, deliver message, and gain agreement. So what are kind of some important things to remember before communicating with your clients? Mel, you can probably touch on this. I'm looking for something like, you know, you want to stay curious.
So Kaylin, just to qualify this. So this is from the time we knock on the door
Mm-hmm.
to whenever we're sitting at the table talking.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody in here, maybe Mel, but maybe somebody else in here can speak to what happens between the time you knock on the door and the time you're actually giving, you know, communicating more about price.
Yeah.
Anybody?
You know, on our sheet, it says to move towards the kitchen and dining room. I don't like to do that right away.
I don't either.
I think the most important, and you spoke to it early on, Mel, was you're building rapport. I think from the first moment you step in, you're starting that rapport. And so how do you spoke a little bit about that. How do you know, you're not all immediately telling them all about the cracks in their ceilings and stuff. Share a little bit about how you build rapport.
No, and you know, it's interesting. It depends on the client's personality, on what you're walking into. The listing that I went to that had the neighbor next door, this couple was a hot mess. They were fighting from the moment I walked in. And I mean, I had lost control. I'm like, oh my Lord. And they were into it. And I just was like, whoa, well, you know, and he's drilling me. She's yelling at him. The dogs are barking. They're jumping. I mean, it was the clusterest listing I've had in a long time. And I just started laughing. And they're like, what's so funny? I'm like, this is a hot mess. We got to get on the same page. Let's just start over. I said, I don't know if I should go back outside and walk in, but we got to start clean here. Because it was bad. And so I finally said, okay. He's like, well, I just need to talk to you first. Don't even look at the house yet. I'm like, all right, you want to see, you know, how do you want this to go? Because I knew I was out of the driver's seat at that point. So I started with him of just, this is what we have to offer. This is who I am. And then I started saying, tell me about you. And then they kept arguing. So I'm like, forget telling me about you. Obviously, you guys don't get along.
But Mel, that's not the norm.
No, that's not.
So what do you normally do when someone normal answers the door?
When they're normal, I just really want to get to know them. You know, and I go back to the interview questions. You know, you guys said you're kind of out of room. That's why we're looking to sell. You're wanting to move over to calmer water. I understand. So I'll start noticing things about the house to complement it. And then I'll say what I'd like to do is go through the home with you. Can you guys kind of show me the best features that you love about it? And then I'm going to make some notes so we can kind of get an idea of the home. And then we're going to sit down at the kitchen table. And then I'll go through kind of the presentation of what the listing process is that I do and what I have to offer. But let's kind of go through the home, and then I'm going to bond with them. And I'll kind of see who's going to lead me, if the wife's going or if the husband's going. Because the one I need to focus on more at the end is typically the quieter one. If they're more quiet, that's who I know I have to win over more.
So why do you go to the kitchen table?
Well, it's more organized, one, and it's more of a business meeting. I don't want to sit down on your couch and be relaxed. This is business. I want to be at a table setting where I have all my forms laid out. I even hand them a pen as well, because normally I don't have one. I'm like, here's this for you to take notes. So when you think of a question, write it down and we can go back and talk about that.
That's a really great point. I like that. Notes and pinpoint.
There's a couple really good points I picked up in there. One thing Jason said about not nitpicking. The other point is when you're going, you know, taking them through the house and having them show you the house, they have a chance to talk about their home. They love talking about their home. You can learn a lot about motivation. How, you know, why is this person really selling? You can learn that during that tour, because you're asking questions while you're going through the home, and then you're taking notes while you're going through the home, which displays your professionalism and how interested you are. Remember, you're interviewing, so the other agents likely are not going to do that, believe it or not. They might do the tour, but they're probably not going to write down a bunch of notes. I make them stop. I mean, I would go through the house and I'd be like, oh, I just a second, I'm not quite caught up. And I'd be writing stuff down. And I mean, not only was it good for me later because I have a terrible memory, but it made them realize that it meant something to me to know that this room had this, this, and this. And I agree totally that is the time where you're bonding.
Hey, Jeff, you made a great point there. It's, there's 3 questions that I love to ask at some point during the conversation. And one is, what's your favorite thing about the house? And you kind of alluded to that, getting them talking about their favorite thing. It shows motivation. The other thing is the exact opposite of that. What's your least favorite thing about this house? And then the third one is not necessarily about the house, but it tells you more about them. And what's your biggest fear in selling your home? Is it the process? Is it tell me about what your biggest fear in this whole process is. And those 3 questions are really good questions.
And lots of times the person that gives you the tour is not the D personality. It's the S personality, and it is the one that cares. That person will tell you why they're really selling, and they will tell you more about where they're going and what they care about, and they will become tighter. That bonding will be more valuable with them than the D person who does not want to leave their chair to do this stupid tour. They just want to know how much the house is worth. Just tell me how much the house is worth. I mean, that tour means a lot, I think, to who wins the listing and how the relationship goes.
Yeah, some other things that I wanted to piggyback off too that you guys were all saying or alluding to also is, make sure that you are presenting yourself in a way that displays that you are the option giver. You're the consultant. You're not the decision maker by any means. And also just always ask a lot of questions. I mean, there is so much power in just being able to ask questions so you gain an understanding or help them to gain an understanding of what they're trying to say or trying to think of too. So those 2 are really great points. And we've covered, like I said, the pre-conversational activities, and now we're kind of touching on this stage 2 of setting the tone, setting boundaries for that win-win relationship, making that rapport, and trying to get to know them. So when you are at the table, you can begin to, like Mel said, get down to business. So does anybody else have anything different that they say or anything different that they do when they're trying to sit their sellers back down at the kitchen table to start talking about the listing their property?
Oh God, please give me this listing. I need one, please. Seems to work pretty good.
Hey, you joke, but that's actually that's a phenomenal point you're making. And in this whole class, one of the absolute best lines, and I think it's a great script to use no matter who you are, and that's just hitting it right in the mouth. My goal today, Jeff, is not to take your listing. It's not to get the listing. It's not. My goal is to make sure that you make the most informed, intelligent listing decisions possible. And I want all of my sellers to be really informed, intelligent on the whole process. And so that's my goal today. And just by saying that in and of itself is going to help you get the listing. Obviously, you want to walk away with the listing. But when that's our goal, truly, that's a self-serving goal. It's not as effective as if you're really trying to serve your client by helping them to make the most effective, intelligent listing decision possible. Oh, and by the way, part of that, the most intelligent part of that is, hiring us to list your home. So.
And Kyle, to your point, there's a lot of agents that don't realize it, but that's what they're communicating. Oh God, please sign this listing. I need this listing so bad. And that's where getting your mind right before, if you don't really believe you can bring value before you go in the door, that's a problem. Kaylin said something I wanted to talk about. You know, you are an option giver. A coach told me a long time ago, when you move to a kitchen table, you move to a kitchen table, you do not want to be across from somebody like squaring off with the person. You want to be, you know, if you can, you want to be looking at both. If there's a couple, you want to be looking at both of them. So you're not looking at one and then looking at another. You want to be at a position where you're not at odds. You're not directly across. A round table is the best, or maybe you're at the head of the table and they're the other two side. I know that sounds funky, but there's a lot of little, you know, body language things that are important in negotiations as well. And if I remain open and I don't stay closed off, or, you know, if I position myself correctly, those are all things that help as well.
One thing I do say to them as well, it's kind of on the lines what you say, Jason. I will tell them, if we choose to move forward together on this process, I'm going to look at it as we are a team. So if you choose to hire me, we are a team going in this together. We have to be on the same page. We have to have our strategies aligned, but it's us against the market then. But we have to be a team. But that's only if we choose to move forward, and that's including me.
I love it.
If I'm going to be okay helping you, and my goal is to help you, but if I don't think I can help you, I'm not going to be your gal. So
Mel, do you ever talk about confidentiality?
Yeah, I do. I tell them, whatever you share with me today, I'm going to go into the role as your seller's agent. So I want you to feel open to tell me, you know, and I go into agency more, you know, even if I'm a dual agent, that doesn't mean I can go tell this other buyer here what you're telling me. So we have to look at it again as a team. I'm on your side. So if there's things about the house that you don't want to disclose, we got an issue, because I'm going to ask you to disclose everything. And that's to protect you as well as me.
That's good.
So, so like I said, getting back to setting the tone. So we've set the tone and you're starting to have that conversation. And now it's time to kind of start uncovering the goals, plans, and strategies. Or like the slide said, this message number 2 portion, it's actually stage 3 of the whole thing. But before you uncover plans and strategies, you must uncover the seller's needs first. So you have to remember to stay neutral and caring. Also avoid vague words, and have them, your clients, also avoid vague words as well. So if you see that they're using vagueness to describe something, again, ask questions. Try to get down to the very minimal of a description as possible. But how do you uncover needs of your sellers right now? What are some questions that you're asking them when you start that process?
Hey, sorry, Caitlin, to interrupt. Do you think this would be a good place to, you know, we want to make sure that we're keeping this to an hour. Do we want to start off the next class with this? If it's a good split, I feel like we're ready to now sit down at the table. And before we sit down at the table, would it be good to have that at the next class? So, because we could spend another hour and a half.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeff?
I think it'd be great. So we've made it all the way to that point, and we can just pick it up right there when we sit down at the table. I think that'd be great. You know,
a lot of people I think they get intimidated by thinking they have, by thinking of it as a process. I think some people don't know where to start. This is a great outline, and it's only 5 steps, and you think, well, there's 6 steps of the pre-conversation activities, there's 3, and the goals, plans, and strategies. It can sound daunting, but when you break it down, and you kind of break it down into these little bite-sized chewable things, I think it really sets in easier. So there's things that you just think of it as, there's pre-conversation activities. There's things that I'm going to do before I sit down at the table. And then there's things that I'm going to cover while we're sitting down at the table. And those are the tone, that's setting the tones. Those are the goals, plans, and strategies, and the mutual expectations. So those are kind of the 3 things that we're doing while we're sitting at the table. And then the last thing is that I'm going to do some post-conversation activities. And sometimes it says handle objections, which a lot of times that's at the kitchen table. But there's things that we're going to go over in that part of it that are actually truly after we get up from the kitchen table. So those are kind of it's a five-step process, but there's really, try to think of it as in three, kind of before we sit at the table, what we're doing at the table, and then what we're doing after the table, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So do you guys have any questions or anything before we stop this session, and then we'll pick this back up next week?
Thank you, Mel, for your insight, and Karen, Kyle, everybody. Such good stuff.
Thank you, Mel.
Look at you.
Guys,
You got an emoji.
How'd you
Bye,
do
guys.
that? Tricky.
Down at the bottom, and you hit reactions.